I am here today with Shari Ulrich, who is originally a California girl. She settled on the west coast of Canada in 1970 and soon launched her life in music. A singer-songwriter and multi-instrumentalist, she's been winning hearts across North America with her voice, sublime songs, and onstage charisma ever since. From her time with the legendary Pied Pumpkin to the Hometown Band and on as a solo artist, her career has resulted in 25 albums to date, including collaborations with Bill Henderson and Roy Forbes in UHF, Barney Bentall and Tom Taylor in BTU, and more recently, the High Bar Gang, a 7+ piece bluegrass band with Barney Bentall and Colin Nairn. Along the way, she's garnered 2 Juno Awards and several nominations, an induction into the BC Entertainment Hall of Fame, and 2014 Canadian Folk Music Award for English Songwriter of the Year. Shari tours much of the year in a variety of configurations, from solo to trio that includes her daughter Julia and fellow High Bar Gang member Kirby Barber, to a quartet with pianist Cindy Fairbank and with a full band. Shari also performs with BTU and the High Bar Gang and produces and hosts Vancouver's Songbird North series for 28 years for the Songwriters Association of Canada. An accomplished and dynamic performer, Shari makes any sized audience feel that they are in her living room. I can attest to this. Drawn in by her insightful lyrics and her engaging warmth and humor. So thank you so much, Shari, for joining me today. I'm really excited.
I'm so happy to be here. I'm in Bragg Creek, Alberta, at Barney Bentall's sister's house because Barney and Tom and I are in the middle of a tour.
Nice.
So this is not my bedroom. In case some of you are really curious what my bedroom looks like, this is not it.
I am so excited to have you here today because I have to totally out myself here. And I grew up listening to you. You were my number one play through all of my teen years. I didn't just know all your songs.
Really?
I think I wanted to be you. Oh yeah. It was, you know what, as I was prepping for this interview, I went on iTunes because it's been a long time since I've listened, and I went to find, it was like your first probably 3 or 4 records, up to Every Road. The ones before that was like my whole, and I put on, the first ones aren't on iTunes. I still have the cassettes though. And I put on the compilation
and a cassette player
record that you have. Well, no, unfortunately. Right. But on iTunes, I put on the compilation record you have, and I can still sing every song word for word.
Oh my God. Well, that must feel pretty good. Your memory still got it.
I can't remember what I ate for breakfast.
Imprint. Oh, wow.
So I'm very excited to have you here today.
That is so odd. That just warms my heart. That is so great to hear. I did not know. I always knew you when you were younger and growing up and stuff, and then was quite impressed that you became a singer, but I didn't know. Aww, give me a big hug.
And the crossover goes back a fair way. I mean, my mom sang on, so I think she sang with you at Expo, and she sang Bee Gees on at least some of the stuff on Every Road. I don't know if she sang on any of the other stuff, but at least on that record.
Yeah.
And and I babysat your daughter, and
and I had your brother on Bluebird. I had Josh on Bluebird North when he was about 14, maybe.
Oh
he
my
was
gosh.
very young. Yeah.
So, do you want to flesh out your story briefly for our listeners who might be having their first experience with you, and tell us a bit about who you are, your journey in the biz, how you got where you are today?
Wow, where to start? Okay. Well, I had always played, I played violin and took violin in grade school. So from grade 4 on till high school. Till grade 9, and we had a piano at home. I had a guitar. I loved music, and of course the Beatles were huge. Joni Mitchell, all of the early 70s, late 60s, early 70s bands, and music was so big in my life. My pink clock radio at the head of my bed was just the source of it all. And when I, let's see, I went off to, I ran away to Canada when I was
Mm-hmm.
18. And I took my violin with me, but I was not thinking at all that music was my path. And it was such a part of me. I didn't take that seriously as something to do. But I was certainly in my wandering years of trying to figure out what am I supposed to do?
Mm-hmm.
What's my thing? And then once I was in Vancouver for a while, I discovered that music was it, that this was actually something that I had a gift for, that I
Mm-hmm.
wasn't starting from scratch. I had an ear, I had good instincts. And so I started teaching myself piano and had my sister's flute with me. So I did play a bit of that. And then I met Rick Scott and Joe Mock, and we formed the Pied Pumpkin, which was the
Mm-hmm.
wildest, most fun, spirited group you could ever imagine, with dulcimer guitar and me on fiddle. I don't think I even played mandolin yet. And that was my formative time of learning that playing music is about being really present, being so in the
Yeah.
moment. Because so much of my role was the icing, which was primarily improvised. So I learned
Mm-hmm.
how to just be present, and that had a huge impact on me. Then I was lured away to the hometown band on the first tour as a sideman with Valdi, and
Mm-hmm.
Joe Mock had written the song "Fear of Flying" by then.
Mm-hmm.
And we did one song a night as his backup band on that first big tour. 3,000 seat theaters, 2 shows a night all across the country. Very heady time. And that song was Flying that I sang.
Mm-hmm.
So it was that song really that created an opportunity for me to have a career.
Yeah.
And that opportunity with Valdi to have that access to a Canadian audience to that degree. So we decided to make the hometown band be a band. We had a record deal with A&M. We made 2 records. At the end of the second album, which the record company rejected, as they often did in those days, saying, "We don't hear a hit," I decided,
Mm-hmm.
okay, now's my chance. I got to write a song, damn it. So I wrote a song called Feel Good on the dulcimer, and it was a successful single. So that really affirmed for me that I should be a songwriter. And then the band
Mm-hmm.
dissolved, and it was a logical step for me to go solo. So I
Mm-hmm.
started writing. My first 3 albums were my first 30 songs. Like
Oh,
I've always
wow.
been a very goal oriented writer. Like I write a song to go out into the world. I don't write 8 songs and pick 4 of them to go out in the world.
Yeah.
That's not something I'm proud of necessarily, but yeah. And then, and then,
No, I'm fascinated by that because, some people really talk about writing, that you have to write so prolifically and then pare down, as opposed to,
yeah,
and I do know you're not the only one. I know a couple of people who don't write that way. They write very goal oriented. It is, they write what goes out into the world and they don't write a lot of extra.
yeah. I
And
think
it's
there's
just,
maybe 4 or 5 songs that I
yeah.
have not recorded because they just didn't quite make it for me. I mean, it doesn't mean that maybe I should have called more, written more, and maybe there would be better songs on those albums. I don't know. But that's just the way I roll. I don't come to writing easily. I'm not
Mhm.
somebody who just has, started with poetry as a teenager and was just always driven to communicate that way. And there's so much else that goes on in having a career in music, so much
Mhm.
that pulls you every single day to feed and push and organize and all of that it's very easy for songwriting to come last. So it comes to me when I have to do it, when I know that I can't sustain my career without putting out another album of music.
Mhm. Mhm.
But when I do get to that place, and then I can get to that creative place. I know how to do that, where I just
Yeah.
shut out everything else, and do what Elizabeth Gilbert says: "Show up, and it will come." And I
Yeah.
start showing up, and it comes, and I love the process once I'm into it.
That's a pretty fantastic skill to be able to be so specific about it, to be able to know that you have that relationship with your creativity, that when you show up, it also shows up for you,
Yeah.
that's
I don't have faith in that all the time until I finally show up and it starts to come. Because before
yeah.
that, I always think, what if it doesn't? This is so hard. This is too hard. But it always does. It's just not that interim period between, okay, I know I have to do this now, and when it does finally come is really painful. I
Yeah.
hate that part, but I do have faith that it's going to come.
Yeah. So here on the Vocal Lab, the goal is to sort of shine a light into the industry through the lens of what I know now that I wish I'd known then.
Oh.
So with that in mind, if you were starting your career all over again, what, if anything, would you do differently?
Wow. My first thought is I don't know that I would have done anything differently.
Mhm.
But the the reality is I'm not a wide success. I don't know that I made any poor choices. I'd love to know if other people think that I did. I didn't, I had opportunities and I took them. Maybe I didn't work hard to get other opportunities, but I definitely have come to a place where I am a firm believer that big time fame is not fun.
Mhm.
I mean, there's fun parts to it.
Mhm.
The money's probably great. You get special treatment. But I think there's so many aspects to it where it's really hard to have a normal life. It's hard to have
Uh-huh.
normal interactions with people. I mean, we know what it feels like if you meet somebody that you just, oh my God, it's that person. And you get
Yeah.
incredibly nervous and churned up and you might try and say something to them. It's not a pleasant feeling. So to be on the receiving end of that, where you'd love to just have a normal conversation with a stranger,
Yeah.
that's a big loss, I think. And I wouldn't want to lose that.
You stop being able to trust any relationships when you're at that
Oh yeah.
level of
It's just
fame.
yeah. It's
Yeah.
fraught with a lot of stuff that is not fun. And I don't say that as a way to feel okay about not being massively famous. I think it's a real thing. But I
Agreed.
have just the right amount
Mhm.
where a stranger will come up and say, I love you.
Mhm.
Like, how great
Mhm.
is that? And and
Really,
and be able
truly.
to share, yeah, be able to share what the music has meant to them. Um, just very and feel comfortable doing it, not feel
Mhm.
they're just right there in front of me. I love those exchanges. I've never not been okay financially through music. So I feel like I just have, and I have enough of a name that I can phone up presenters and I don't have to send them a bunch of demos to try and explain what I
Mhm.
do. I mean, they know who I am, they know what I do. So that has made it a very smooth and enjoyable life in
Yeah.
music.
I was just gonna say that I think that you've hit a beautiful sweet spot where, you as you say, you're not at the place where you have to deal with all the negative pieces of big fame,
Yeah.
but you've been able to create your life and support yourself. Um, I mean, as far as I know anyway, from the outside, it looks like support yourself entirely through the pursuit of original music. And that is
Yes.
I think that's an enormous thing to be proud of and an enormous gift to be able to live your life through the pursuit of your own original creativity and self-support that way. That's a huge success to me.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
But of course, we all have a relative. It doesn't matter where we are, we always have a relative sense of, oh, I should be doing better. I should be working
Yeah.
harder. There's a lot of shoulds. And considering the fact that I believe that the music is all about getting it out to people, I would love for it to be out to the world without the
Mhm.
accompanying fame.
Mm. Yeah.
So I will always feel, I'll probably go to my grave feeling like, I should have worked harder. I
Mm.
should have tried harder. I should have been more successful. I should have been bigger. But I'm somebody who lives more in the moment, so that makes my life very enjoyable. But
Mhm.
there will always be that sort of overriding.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the nature. I mean,
Yeah.
that's how and why we strive too. But
Yeah.
I'm pretty darn happy with how it's all rolled out.
And is there anything that you haven't already just covered in that factors into the question of what would you do the same all over again? Sort of the flip side of what would you do differently? What
Oh,
would you do the
yeah.
same?
Well, I always kept a sense of the fact that the music that it's not about me. It's not about how good I am or how
Mhm.
great I am or whatever. It's about the music. And
Yeah.
so I learned early on, and this might have come from the pumpkin even, but I certainly have felt it more and more as time's gone on, that when I'm on stage, I never feel like, look at me,
Mhm.
or even have a great degree of self-consciousness about the fact that I'm on stage. It's more about celebrating the music. I'm giving them this experience of music that is a gift to
Mhm.
me in the first place. And I mean, I'm just ever in awe of what music does for people and how it makes them feel, how it makes me feel, what it does for society. It's so magical and it's so powerful. So I have always felt in honor of that. I have felt like that is the thing to bear in mind. And doing so also makes it a lot easier to be comfortable on stage.
Mhm.
And that was the thing that I learned early on too, was because in the hometown band era, I was really uncomfortable on stage because really, like I was always comfortable playing, but
Mhm.
it's a weird, like performing is a weird thing to do. Like
It
you're
is.
doing this thing that you're making music, which you love doing, and you love the music, and people are watching you do it. Like
Yeah.
it's almost impossible not to. I don't get nervous, but it's impossible not to be anxious about that and have little voices going, how do I look? How do I sound? What do they think of me? Have all that noise going on.
Yeah.
So I was in the hometown band when I was fronting a band too. I was so uncomfortable talking to the audience
Mhm.
because those voices were so loud and I felt so insecure about anything I might say. And I could feel the band's judgment about, you're not really a very strong front person here for us, this band of guys. But after I had a band and pared it down to just a couple of players, I realized that I could just take myself on stage. Like I don't actually have to be
Yeah.
anyone different than this or in any way different than this. Just be who I am. And it was life changing. It just makes performing so fun because
Yeah.
there's just no room for those voices. You're just being yourself like you would in any other situation with a little bit more finesse with an instrument. But yeah, I
Yeah.
forget the original
Well,
question, but what would I do the same?
what
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, what would you do the same? And I saw you on stage recently. You did well, I wasn't there in person, but it was a streamed thing. It was a shared concert with you and Jane Mortefi,
Oh
through
yeah.
the
Yeah.
last year, maybe the year
Yeah.
before. I
Rogue
don't know.
Folk Club. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. We
that's
did
the
a
one.
double bill. Yeah.
And that was one of the things that struck me was just how easy and comfortable you are in your audience banter. You're funny and engaging and warm, and it's, I mean, what your bio says about how easy, it's like you're being invited into your living room. That's really what it feels like. Your
Yeah.
stage presence is really comfortable and fun and funny, and yeah.
And that comes too from feeling so strongly that it's my main focus is to make sure the audience is comfortable. I
Mhm.
never want them to be uncomfortable. So I might have some mishap that inside I'm going, oh shit.
Yeah.
But I know if I make a joke out of it, they're not going to be uncomfortable. And
Yeah.
that's my job, is to keep them comfortable.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's fun.
It really, really is fun. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we are in an industry that sees widely varying levels of education when it comes to supplementing talent. Some formal, some very self-taught. What did your musical education look like, and how has that impacted your career, what you've done?
Well, I did learn to read music from playing the violin, which was a very handy tool. I'm not a great sight reader, but it does allow me to write charts for my songs so that I can relay the songs in that form, which I think is a valuable tool. Some of that was self-taught by people like Bill Sample and Michael Krieber, or just other people who write charts and figuring out, or Bill Runge. But I did not have any other formal training. I've never had voice training. It's not, again, not something I'm proud of. I think I sang better when I was playing flute and saxophone because it allowed me to focus more on getting my power from my diaphragm and, down here instead of just all in my throat. And I did take violin lessons through the Pied Pumpkin era. I took violin lessons. And I have always felt, and I think this happens to a lot of people, if you're not formally trained, it's easy to have a little voice that says you're not quite good enough, or that there's an insecurity that comes there.
Imposter syndrome.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I don't know if I've had that, but I certainly am familiar with it in a lot of other arenas.
Yeah.
But I do think, I think the more training, the better, the more education, the better. So this is really more of a glitch in my personality, that I'm somebody who doesn't want to stop and read the directions. I want to just put the thing together or whatever it is, right? I just want to get to it and not take that time. So that applies to pretty well everything I do. I just want to do it, and I want to learn about it. I want to do it, and then I'll have learned about it.
I don't think that, don't get me wrong. I think music education is super valuable, and I certainly was, I feel like that was a blessing in my life that I had lots of music education, and partly just growing up in the family that I did. And then I did go to school, up at CAP, and did a bunch. I didn't quite finish, but I did a bunch of my jazz degree and all of that. So I do have a fair bit of education. However, I also really recognize that in the field of contemporary music, pop, rock, folk, that those genres, it's different than if you're trying to work in like musical theater or opera or classical music just as a whole. Jazz can really go either way, but there are some fields where you really, really have to have a formal education because you have to be able to read to do your job.
Yeah.
And there are some fields where if you are someone who is naturally gifted and have a great ear and you pick up a lot of stuff by ear, the formal education isn't necessarily so required. And so I don't know that I see that as a negative thing. It's just a thing.
Yeah, and it's not a hindrance either. It's a bonus if you have it. I think the only time that it can get in the way is with classical players if they've never played by ear. If they've only ever read music, then I think that kind of education can be a bit of a hindrance, although they might not feel it as such if they're never in that situation where. But I think of music as more about it being more fluid, and other than writing a song and having lyrics and having structure to a song, the performance of it can be quite fluid, and arrangement can be all over the place and give it different colors, etc. But I think those are the only situations where a very highly trained person who's never done any improvising would be really intimidated by it and kind of miss out on that part of the experience. But otherwise, there's so many examples. Joni Mitchell is one of them, who has no way of analyzing what she does. She just does it. And I have noticed when I first started writing, for instance, on piano, and I hadn't had any formal training on piano, and I had grown up with one. So I'd listen to my sister's lessons, and then I'd go and remember what she played by ear. But a lot of it was happy accidents. I just put my hands on the keyboard, and if it sounded good, that combination of fingers, then I'd remember where they went. and so I could repeat it. And I think that my songwriting had a bit more adventurous flair because of that. Because now, 45 years, 50 years later, I have pattern, my hands, whether it's on guitar or piano. And I think a lot of songwriters can sort of veer off into not realizing that they're repeating those patterns, and their songs start to have very similar changes and things like that. So that's why I like to pick up an instrument sometimes that I don't know how to play, because then there's lots of happy accidents, and then you follow that and see where it leads you.
I started playing guitar for exactly that reason, because I grew up playing piano. And I mean, I was never any pro piano player or anything, but I played well enough, certainly well enough to self-accompany and do that.
Right.
But I found myself writing the same stuff over and over again, ostensibly. And so I got a guitar, and what was great was I didn't have to learn music all over again. I just had to learn how to apply it to a new instrument, how to apply it in a different way under my fingers. And it was exactly that. I found shapes that I liked, and I didn't even know how to name the chords, but I liked the way it sounded, and I could slide my hands up and down. And so I started writing very different things. And I think that can be so useful to pick up an instrument, even if it's never with the intent to get good enough at it to be a performer on that instrument, even if it's only ever as a writing tool, can be so useful.
Yeah. I have had something come up in my life that was completely unexpected, in that I got curious about a tenor guitar. I just thought, someday I'd like to get a tenor guitar. And a fellow out of the blue contacted me from Craven Tenor Guitars. He only makes tenor guitars because he really believes for people who are intimidated by having all 6 strings, that they should have a shot at playing guitar. So he contacted me about having a Shari Ulrich signature tenor guitar. So they're being manufactured right now, and they're sweet little instruments, and I can't wait. I've got the prototype, but I don't have the actual issued one yet. But it's really been a unexpected turn, in that I wouldn't have pursued that myself. I was just thrilled to get that I might get a free tenor guitar. I thought, this is perfect. But it's blossomed into more than that. But for the same reason, because a tenor guitar, I'm used to a dulcimer, which is usually tuned in a modal way and doesn't have all the frets. It's just a diatonic scale, so it has its limitations. But I love the simplicity of it, and I love the happy accidents that happen when you change tunings. So I'm really excited about this chapter of my writing, to have this new tool that has a bit of more impetus, and that the more songs I can create on it and share, the more I'll be supporting the Craven Shari Ulrich tenor guitar. So very cool. And I'm always a big fan of picking up instruments that are new.
That's very. So what is I'm actually not familiar with a tenor guitar. What is different about that?
Well, it technically, I believe, I should know this, but I'm pretty sure it's the top 4 strings of a guitar, and not the bottom 4. But there are different tunings. You can tune it like I would a mandolin and fiddle, which are both tuned the same in fifths. So I could tune it that way as well. So you can change it around. And of course, every time you change the tuning, then your fingers are doing different things when you're playing chords. So it's really exciting as a writing tool, but I'll probably put strings that are an octave lower or something lower, like higher gauge strings, and to give it a little bit more body so that it's good for a self-accompanied performance live. Have a little bit more richness to it.
So you play a lot of different instruments. So
I do play a lot of instruments.
What are they? List them off.
Okay. Well, all right. Well, you know about the violin. I picked up mandolin several years ago because it's tuned the same, and I love playing mandolin because it's very rhythmic. I love being able to, I'm not as good a rhythm guitar player as I am a rhythm mandolin player. Guitar, obviously, is one that I write on, and dulcimer, and piano. Piano's probably my second favorite to violin because I love writing on piano and I love playing piano. I used to play. I still have a flute and I play it occasionally in special variety shows or something where a flute is needed. And I used to play alto sax. But I foolishly sold it a long time ago, and I haven't found one that I like as much. But I also, it's a long trip to being a good sax player. So I often joke that I go for quantity, not quality. Like, I'm not a brilliant player on anything. I'm a very functional singer-songwriter player, and I'm an okay violinist. I know how to play within my skills and serve the song. So which is to me the number one requirement for any musician. If you are either accompanying a songwriter or being a songwriter, it's always about serving the song, serving the music. Yeah. So I've often, and again, this could just be a justification for not practicing, but I feel like there's some bonus to being limited because I can't go off and be flashy. I mean, there's so many players that are all flash and no soul because they're just trying to impress the audience as to how great they are. And I don't have that option. So it means that I just have to play within my skill set and serve the song. So, I'm playing with Barney and Tom right now. So I play violin and mandolin and guitar and piano, but with them, accompanying them. I mean, this is why I've had a career with trios of other songwriters whose work I love, whose songs I love, because then I get to have that part of me and serve them in that way, which it's such an honor to do and to harmonize. And 3-part harmony, as you know, is just the greatest. So I'm in the thick of that right now, where I just like every bit of my consciousness is about just feeding this song something that will make it even more beautiful, and just hold it up like that. And I haven't picked up any other. Well, there'll be the tenor guitar will be the new one that I pick up.
So you have had the privilege of being able to work with your daughter, and for a number of years now, you have created that privilege in your in your musical.
I created an engineer and a musician to accompany me right there in my womb.
That whole working relationship?
Oh God, yes. It's one of my favorite subjects. I knew that if I tried to make her be anything, that it would backfire terribly. So I wanted her to have all her fingers and toes, and that was basically it, and a brain. And then I just took her with me. I took her with me on the road constantly. And so she was always a part of that world. And she started violin or piano when she was 4 and violin when she was 5, and played them until she went off to university. I mean, studied them, like had lessons until she went off to university. So she is far more skilled player than I am. And when she was 12, she started playing with me. So she, violin. And a little mandolin. I thought mandolin might have come later. A little bit of guitar, she just had the ear. She was born with the ear that I was born with. She never really wanted to be like, I want to be on stage. Like she's like some musicians I know who they just want to play the music, and it's great that people want to hear them. But she's not a showman. And about 6 months or a year or so into it, after a few times of saying, it'd be great if you wanted to sing harmonies. And she said, I will, I'm just not ready yet. And then one day she said, okay, I'm ready. And I taught her all the harmony parts, and I never had to remind her of anything. She just nailed them all immediately. So she's great as a harmony singer in a group. And so she went off to university, and started a choir, an a cappella choir, did all the arrangements. And when I think when she was in high school, when she asked to take a Pro Tools course for recording, she was just curious about it. So when she was in university, she did her undergrad in psychology and and sound recording. And then she decided to go in and get her master's in sound recording, which is where she met her partner, James Perella. So they're both very, very busy engineers. So she's working mostly in film and television as a music editor, and he's the recording engineer for the VSO and the Victoria Symphony and at the Chan Center and the Debaters. So they're both very busy in their fields and having just great lives and great time doing it. But their real love is to record albums for artists. So when she was in her second year of her master's, she had an assignment to record an album for an artist. So she asked me if I wanted to do that. So of course I said yes. And so that was really. So that was her first recording project, and it was a fantastic experience because there was so much we didn't have to say while we were recording because she's so intuitive and she's been around music her whole life. So we didn't have to say, well, before the chorus, 4 bars before let's start there. Like we both knew where we're going to go back to. So it was very easy to work with.
I think too, when with family, when you have that like genetic piece that you've just grown for so many years doing music together, there is that like intuitive ESP kind of piece. My brother and I are like that in music,
absolutely.
where there's just pieces that require no explanation or like one word, and we both know what we're talking about instead of
and you both go, oh yeah.
It's so much fun working in that.
Yeah
Anyway, continue.
yes it is. Yeah, no, I'm glad you brought that up because that definitely has something to do with it. So she's less inclined to play. She used to do it just. I know it's this piece of paper here that I'm bumping up against. I won't do that anymore. So she is very busy with her actual real job. But she will go on the road with me when we have Cindy Fairbank playing piano or Kirby Barber, because it's a little more fun than just being with mom. I mean, she's really spent way much more time with her mother and her father, because she plays with her dad too, David Graff, than any child should have to. I mean, she wouldn't say it that way, but sometimes I think, I mean, we're so lucky that we have so much of her in our lives, and to have that professional relationship with your offspring it's very cool. I just love it.
That's super cool.
So pretty darn proud. And then there's, as far as offspring goes, there's the other little corner of it, which is that when she was 17, I found the son that I gave up for adoption when I was 16. And he is very musical. Music was not his path. He's an architect. But when we first found each other, the first concert I did, I'd written an album that had a song about him, and we were doing the CD release concert, and he was going to come up for it, he and his family. So I said, why? I knew that he had played drums in high school. So I said, would you be interested in getting a cajon and playing with us? And he was totally keen, learned all the songs, has great feel. So it was the day before Mother's Day, and it was at the same venue, St. James, for the Rogue Folk Club. And so I was bookended by Julia and Mike playing the evening with me.
How cool is that?
And it was just heaven. And so he got the musical genes and loves music and loves to play with us whenever he can.
That's very cool.
Very
that's
cool.
Just very cool.
Yeah.
So you have been working consistently and successfully in the field of original music for almost 50 years. You've picked up a few trophies along the way. You have a star on Granville and Robson, done a couple of shows, Carole King's Tapestry and your own Baby Boomer Blues. Oh,
yes, it wasn't my own.
I misread that then.
But
the attribution.
No, that's okay. That's okay. It was by Vonnie Grindler, and oh gosh, I'm forgetting the name of her company. Anyway.
Okay. So sorry, that was I misread the attribution there, but you did a couple of shows. You've hosted Bluebird North for 28 years. And you've worked with a shit ton of other great artists along the way, and you've created this opportunity to work musically with your daughter. What do you think So point being, I think that is indicative of a pretty, a career that denotes a lot of longevity. So what do you think creates a career with longevity?
Yes. Wow. I think doing it because you love it so much, and doing it because you honor the music so much that it's less about your ego.
Oh, yeah.
Because there's lots of rejection, and I've just learned early on that it's not a reflection of my value, and that helped. Like, when I left the hometown band, or sorry, when I went solo and I had my third album coming out on MCA worldwide record release, it came out in Canada, and then a week later when it was supposed to come out in the US, which would have been my big break, the Irving Azoff came in as the new president and fired most of the A&R and dropped 80% of the artists, and I was one of them. So that was very career changing. And when I was trying to get another record deal, I kept being rejected. And then I finally realized, well, I don't look like a big money maker. Like, I don't dress like the big, like that kind of star. But I knew that people loved my music and that I should continue to do it. And so that was a real corner where I realized that I had to take my value from myself and not by the opportunities that I got. And that helped, because then it takes the suffering out of it, or however you might characterize what that feels like. So I just lost track of what the original question. Longevity. Thank you. Keep asking people to remind you what you're talking about. That helps. And being able to be as versatile as I've been, so that I can play with other people and be an accompanying musician as well, and a harmony singer. So it's made such a variety of projects possible. And I also learned to always say yes. I mean, unless I just felt it was something that, this is going to sound terrible, but to say if it was beneath me somehow, or just something I wasn't going to enjoy. But I always would say yes. I always do say yes when it's something, especially if it scares me, like it's outside of my comfort zone, like Baby Boomer Blues or Tapestry, the theater stuff, or well, pretty much anything I'm asked to do. If it's outside of my experience, then I've learned to say yes, and it has never backfired. It's always been a great, challenging, in the very positive sense of the word, experience. So that has helped to say yes instead of no. I think sometimes it's easy to get very precious about your career, and as I said, I never take where I am on a bill, if it's a festival, or I never take any of that as a testament to to my value. And it makes it a lot easier, and it means I get a lot more opportunities, because I don't turn them down based on not being on a high enough in the bill, or it being like some of the shows that we're doing on this tour. I mean, Barney Bentall can play to a 10,000 seat venue, but he also understands the value of being in a room with 100 people or 70 people and having that moment with them, having that experience and sharing the music. The impact on them is visceral, and so they're right there, and they're that's so nurturing as an artist, and nurturing for the audience too. So knowing what is important about what I do and what we do, and that's not about us. It's about having this great gift and the impact on people who experience it.
I love that.
And tuning up first.
Oh, God, yes.
Always tuning my instruments first. There's a few things that I always want to say to fledgling artists. Tune your instrument, play in tune.
Yeah. I remember seeing you play. This just speaks to like the importance of something being in tune, and that it really trumps everything else. And I don't know if this was a Bluebird North thing, or if this was actually like a concert that you did. This probably would have been 20 years ago or so, but you were playing something and you were going from one song into another. And it was this thing, and it was a violin thing that it was like a long sustained note. And it was supposed to be this really big, heartfelt, I don't know if you were going into like House Up on the Hill, or I don't know. It was something where it was like this moment of tension, and you went into it, and your violin, it wasn't quite in tune, and you stopped everything and you went, I'm sorry, this was supposed to be this great moment, but I can't do it. I have to tune. And you stopped and you tuned and you started it again. And you know what? It was the right thing to do, because it would have been awful to play the whole song out of tune.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
For the whole song.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm with you on that.
It's just a thing. And I think a lot of times an audience doesn't necessarily, I think the audience doesn't necessarily notice that something is out of tune, but they'll just kind of feel like, it's just kind of a sour feeling. And I'm
with you on that.
Number one.
It's better to stop and fix it than it is to continue on and just be bad the whole time.
Yes. Well, that is the secret to, I think, being a performer that people enjoy, is just to never to make light of everything, and never think that you have to pretend that something bad isn't happening, or just do whatever you need to do and include them, and they love being included, and they even with whatever it is that you feel, as long as you're not starting to swear and.
Thanks for joining me today. That was the first half of my interview with Shari Ulrich, and I can't wait for you to hear the rest. We will be back on Thursday with the rest of that journey, so make sure to